AI isn't just coming for your career, it's coming for your identity. Because if you're like most high achievers, you've built your entire sense of self around your job title, your expertise, and whether important people engage with your LinkedIn updates. But what nobody's talking about is, if that's the case, when AI can do what you do better, who are you? Let me be clear, it could genuinely disrupt how you pay your bills and worsen wealth disparity. So you should absolutely be developing new career or technical skills, especially the ones that help you master AI. But while everyone's focused only on the economic survival, they're missing something crucial. If your entire identity is tied to a job that AI can do better, you're vulnerable in ways that go far beyond money. We're going to chat about this today. You know, you're not wrong for building your identity around professional achievement. Our culture taught you that's how you prove your worth. The problem is that when your career is your only source of meaning, you're vulnerable to AI in ways that go beyond job security. For those of you who have spent decades proving your value through performance, AI forces you to confront a few questions that you've been avoiding. And one of the key ones is, who are you beyond your career or business accomplishments? You today have the opportunity to start cultivating greater meaning in your life in a way that no algorithm can touch. And this isn't about abandoning ambition. It's about grounding your ambition in something deeper than the external validation that comes from your career or your job. Something that's more irreplaceable than your job. There are 3 things that are not career related that if you start investing in now will make you less vulnerable to the AI disruption that's predicted. The first thing is to build identity beyond external achievements. Now, the lie that you've been sold is that your whole value comes from what you accomplish, title, your salary, your professional expertise, and the recognition that all of that gets you. And this is exacerbated by the fact that success today, especially in the corporate world, is often intertwined with other people's perceptions of you, whether that perception is real and factual or not. And although you can control some of that, a lot of it you really can't. And this heightens the pressure to prove yourself constantly. And it makes you heavily preoccupied with other people's judgments and opinions of you. So it becomes even harder to work on your authentic self and know who your authentic self is. And so you spend years chasing the next thing or the next approval or just people's general approval of you at work, thinking that it will finally make you feel worthy and satisfied. But these things are only temporary. And although they might give you a high, that high is short-lived and will always leave you needing more. I have a question for you, and that is to think of a time when you felt truly proud of yourself, but it had nothing to do with work achievements. What was happening? What did you do? And most critically, what does it tell you about what actually matters to you? And I want to add a bonus question. What do you find yourself envying in other people's lives? Because as uncomfortable it makes us to admit that we feel envy, it can be a very valuable data source because it's often revealing what you actually want and what's important to you, but you may not feel you have the courage to get it or that you can get it. The second thing is relational wealth. And this is another way that you can avoid the achievement trap that makes you vulnerable to AI. It's to build your own relational wealth portfolio. Harvard tracked 1,300 people for 85 years in the longest study on human happiness, and they wanted to find what makes humans happy. And the results were very clear. It wasn't money, it was not achievements, it wasn't your job title, it was relationships. Good relationships. They keep us happier, healthier, and help us live longer. You know, it's just an unavoidable fact. Strong social connections can also reduce premature death risk by 26%. No matter how much the world tries to convince us that relationships aren't important, and I mean non-work related relationships, the data already proves that that's just not true and it's not the case. But the thing is, we tend to have a strategy for how we'll navigate our careers and our businesses. And the world encourages us to have that. But we tend to not have a plan or a strategy outside of those things. Typically most of my clients, they have what's called a stakeholder map. They have a strategic networking plan for how they'll build relationships to advance their careers or their businesses. But when it comes to their relationships outside of the professional arena, the ones that are in their personal lives, there's no plan. There's no strategy for how they'll navigate them and ensure that they get the best outcomes from them possible. I have a 3 circles framework for building relationships that matter beyond networking, and I use these in my conversations with clients. So one way you could think about your relational wealth portfolio outside of your work and business connections is to think about it in these 3 circles. And you can draw them now, or you can visualize them as I'm speaking, and I'll put something up on the screen. The first circle is your inner circle. And this consists of 3 to 5 people who know your authentic self beyond your achievements. They know you beyond your popularity, and your utility is completely insignificant to them. So they're not looking at you through the lens of what you can do for them and how well you can advance their own professional goals. The second circle consists of your growth partners. And these are relationships that are focused on mutual development and growth. And that mutual development and growth could be spiritual, physical, emotional, or all of the above. And this is not about networking or transactional interactions. These are people who can be radically honest with you, and vice versa. And the last circle I suggest you think about is the outer circle, and those are your community anchors. These relationships are about your regular participation in groups with those individuals. And again, these groups go beyond your professional identity. So the group could be centered around a hobby, for instance. The people in these 3 circles aren't only trying to stay close to you because of work, because of your seniority level at work, or because you have something they want. No, these people are invested in your growth and joy outside of your professional achievements and status. In an AI disrupted world where careers are becoming more unpredictable, your relational wealth also helps you to uncover greater meaning and explore more of who you are. Quality relationships also become your support system while you're navigating all this change. And that change could be losing a job or a job changing drastically. The third and final thing I want to recommend you start intentionally building are your core values and principles. Something that I've seen and heard a lot about values and principles is that most people think that they already know what their values are. But the truth is that what you say you value and what you actually value are 2 different things. And most of the time that I have done work with clients on this, the values activities they've done have been picking words that they like the sound of from a list. And those have become their values. But your real values aren't the pretty words that you pick from a list. They're revealed through how you spend your time, through the things you do and the things that you say. And this matters because when you know what your actual values are, not the ones you wish you had, you can now make choices that align with who you really are. Or alternatively, you can start to think about changing your choices to make sure they do align with the values that you aspire to have that you may not yet have. And what's powerful is that establishing these values now will also guide you on how to use AI ethically in the future, because AI ethics is becoming an increasingly significant issue in the domain of technology. So here's a quick question to help you start to decipher what your actual values are. Reflect on what makes you most frustrated, because that frustration usually signals that your values are being violated. In those moments, what do you wish people understood? The truth about AI preparation is that most people are focusing on learning new technical skills, which is great. The second part is even more critical for your survival in an AI world. You need both the capabilities to stay relevant and the inner foundation that makes you irreplaceable as a human being. Now is your chance to expand your definition of success to include who you're becoming and not just what other people think about you and your accomplishments. Everything I just shared and the questions that I encourage you to ponder on, they're really only the beginning. you might discover that the things you thought you cared about aren't really the things you do care about. In keeping with the theme of AI's impact on our careers and our identities, in my next video, I'm sharing something that I use in my own life and that I've used with great success with my clients. It's called Odyssey Planning, and it will really challenge how you think about your future and the opportunities that are available to you. But for now, take one simple action. Choose one of the areas we discussed today, whether it be identity, relationships, or values, and take the question from that area and discuss it with someone that you trust and see what comes out of that. Tell me in the comments below which area you want to think a bit more deeply about. Next, I recommend you watch part 2 to this, but until next time, keep mastering what matters most.